Hey YouTubers, this video is in response to some suggestions by viewers that I do a video where I show a few of my favorite photos that I've taken and talk about them and why I like them and what I was thinking, that sort of thing. And I assume you want me to talk about what gear was used as well. So that's what I'm going to do here. I've picked a dozen. Suggestions were 5 to 10. It was hard for me to settle on 5 or 10, not because I have so many great photos, just because um, there's a lot of variety and I kind of wanted to include examples of different sorts of photos that I've taken. And so, with that said, let's have a look at what I've got here. This first photo was taken in 2010, and this obviously is at night, and I took this with a Leica M2 and I believe the Zeiss 50mm sonar. Let's see. Come on. Yeah. And it's on Tri-X, and I used Diafine to develop it. And I exposed this film at ISO 1250. So Diafine's good for doing that sort of development. It has a built-in push. Anyway, this photo is taken nearby my house, obviously at a fountain at night. And I felt really lucky that these two kids, I think they're probably brothers, were playing around the edges of the fountain. And I just sort of tripped over this composition. They stayed in this position long enough for me to actually dial in focus and get the shot. So it's one of those happy accidents that comes up every once in a while. I feel like it captures kind of a sense of wonder that the boys have at the lights. The lights in the water. The water kind of looks like diamonds with the frozen movement. I was able to use a relatively fast shutter speed. I don't remember what the shutter speed was, but because of the ISO I was shooting at, it was reasonably fast. So that's the first one. This next photo is was taken with the Fuji GW 693, and this is a really nice camera I've done a review of. It's a 6x9 medium format, 6x9 centimeter medium format shot. And well, what I like about this shot is just how much subtle detail there is in the shot. The Fuji captures amazing levels of detail. It's got a very, very sharp lens, and I don't know, it creates photos that look real, basically. So it's something that strikes me about this particular photo. I took this fairly late in the evening, and because of the Fuji's leaf shutter, no vibration, etc., I was able to take a pretty slow exposure and have a pretty sharp photo come out of it. Let's see what film this is on. I think it's Ilford. Yeah, it's Delta, I believe it's Delta 400. And this is a lab scan. It was lab developed. Okay, this is another photo taken. Let me back up for a second. I am probably most often a landscape photographer or cityscape photographer. I just kind of like to do quiet scenes, whether they're in the city or out in the country. And this one's obviously out in the country. This is in Colorado, in an area called Twin Lakes. What we're looking at here actually isn't the lake, it's a canal nearby the lake. So again, this was taken with the Fuji GW 693, and I included this one because, well, it's one of my very favorites. This happens to be a drum scan of the negative, and if I can hover my mouse down here without bringing that stuff up, you see the size down here, 65 meg. The drum scan is actually about twice, maybe 3 times as large as this 65 meg version. I've resized this in order to be able to work with it a bit. And just to give you an idea of the level of detail, just here, let me zoom in on a few spots. So this area over here, you can see how much detail is there. If I go up into the mountains up here, you can practically count the trees. This may not come across in the video. It's just pretty amazing. You can count the evergreen trees up here. Now if I zoom back out, it's actually hard for me to find where I was. I was over here, and that's this area. So I was over here. So that gives you an idea of just how much detail the Fuji can capture. This is the moon. I have the camera on a monopod to take this shot, and I think this is Delta 100. Let's see. Wow, did I not capture what film I used? I'm pretty darn sure this is Delta 100, so I'm going to stick with that. This was also lab developed. Okay, yet another shot from the Fuji GW693. This is taken not too far from my house at a park that I like to go to. The light on this day was just perfect. I love shooting in hazy light. It's just the best. These geese came walking across the street. Everything looked pretty perfect. I liked the way they were parading. I liked the background, so I grabbed this shot. I think I was at the maximum aperture of the Fuji, which is, I believe, f3.5. So it's got fairly shallow depth of field, even though I was fairly far away from the geese. One interesting thing about this photo is it actually is a conversion to black and white from a color photo taken on Ektar film. So I just think that this shows off the sort of 3D quality of medium format film. If you look at the tree and the geese, they almost seem real. So that's one reason I like this photo so much. Okay, this photo, I don't do all that much sort of candid street photography. I'll do it every once in a while, but I fairly seldom get anything I like. This photo, I was actually squaring up to take a picture of these old telephone booths, or stations, whatever you want to call them. And as I was sort of approaching the area, this woman walked into the picture, and I literally got a grab shot of her walking into the frame. And this is with Contax RX and the 28mm Zeiss lens. It's a fantastic lens. One thing I like about this photo is the action, but more so, there is a lot of color cohesion here, and I can't claim that I planned that, but it turned out nicely. I was attracted by the color. When I shoot color film, I'm often just taking photos of color in the scene. So I'll oftentimes have a fairly abstract composition and just try to capture the color. So what I like here, I don't know if you'll be able to see what I'm pointing at, but the woman's headband, I believe, I have horrible color vision, is some sort of version of red. And then we've got this sign that's red. Maybe her headband's green. I'm red-green color aligned. You guys can tell me. We got this red sign, the red phone booths, the red text here, and then the blue of her jeans, the blue in the phone, the text of the phone booths here, and the blue in natural light and the logo. And that, it just all kind of sticks together nicely. So this is one of my street photos that I like fairly well. This photo was taken with a Fuji GA645ZI. I have a review of that camera. This was taken in Kentucky at Fort Boonesboro. What I like about this photo, my main thing I like about it is the tones and the detail. I scanned this on my home scanner. It is not the ultimate in quality like the landscape shot a few frames ago at Twin Lakes. But it's pretty good, and it's just not super sharp. But you can see there's some fine detail in here. I could have scanned it probably at a higher resolution. But you can see the file size is 156 meg. This photo is equivalent to a 210, or sorry, 21 megapixel photograph. So fairly high density. Again, I like the tones. I kind of like the spray of suckers coming off of this trunk, and I really like the way the roots are embedded around the rocks. And this actually I have a print of on the wall. Okay, this is a Hasselblad photo. I believe it was taken with a 60 millimeter lens, yes. And I believe it's on Tri-X. No, it's on Plus X. That's a 125 ISO film, not made anymore in 120 size, unfortunately. I'm very sad about that. It's one of my favorite films. This is also fairly close by to my house, fairly close by to the park where I took the picture of the geese. And I just think this photo shows off the amazing levels of detail that you can get from a Hasselblad. This was on a tripod, and the light again was just perfect on this day. What drew me to take this photo is I've always loved these trees. I wish I could figure out what sort of tree they are. They look like aspens here, but when I'm actually there, they don't strike me as aspens. So I'm not sure what they are. Again, tons of detail, and this is, you know, just done on my home scanner. If I could get it drum scanned, I think it would be truly amazing how much detail would be in the photo. Compositionally, what I like about it is sort of the triangular shape here of the barn, and then this very, I guess, the graceful curves of the trunks of the trees and the sprays of leaves. And then I even like the negative space of the sky, you know, that is made by the shapes of the leaves. And I like the light in the photo as well. All right, this next photo kind of has an interesting story. This is actually a panoramic stitch of 2 Hasselblad shots. And the first shot was really, I was taking pictures of the cattle and the mountain in the background. And so I was kind of happy with that shot, and as I was winding on to the next frame, I realized there was a cowboy coming into the scene. So I grabbed a quick shot of him too. And then later I realized, hey, you know, I didn't take it on purpose as a panorama, but later I realized that I could certainly stitch them together. So that's what this is. This is down in sort of mid-southern Colorado near Buena Vista. And this was, did I say it was taken with a Hasselblad? I think it's with a 150 millimeter lens. Yes, it is, and it's on Portra. It's a really, really good film, really natural colors, not overblown. Ektar has kind of overblown colors, which work really great for some subjects. Maybe not as well for this sort of landscape, so I was glad that I had Portra on this shot. All right, this shot is also with Plus X. Remember a couple of frames ago, I had a Plus X shot. This is also in sort of southern central Colorado, near Highway 285. And this is also with a Hasselblad, and I believe this is with an 80 millimeter lens, maybe a 60. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's with the 80. And as I said, it's Plus X. This was developed in Rodinal by me and scanned by me. This is one of those photos that I actually went back to get. I was driving. I took an alternate route home from a route I normally take when I travel in this region, and I saw this scene, and I was kind of, you know, I was out there to take photographs, but I just couldn't convince myself to stop. But this silvery lake in the distance really stuck in my head, so I probably drove another 5 to 10 miles and just said, I got to turn around. I got to take that shot. I got to see what I can frame up. So I actually stopped, turned around, and drove back. And this is what I got. It's not a technically perfect scan. It could be a lot better. But I do like the results. The sky has this sort of, You know, at the top, the clouds are pretty well defined, and then below, it's all hazy and sort of halo-y. I don't know how to describe it. There's sun rays, and it's just a really kind of interesting looking sky. And then you've got that band of white lake in the distance, surrounded by those hills. And it's just got a really austere look that I like a lot. I've printed this off for myself and for friends, and I gave it away as a Christmas present last year. This is one of my favorites, even though I've only given it 3 stars, looks like, in Aperture. I'm not very consistent about that kind of thing. All right, this photo was taken with a Contax G2, and I think with the 45mm lens. Let's see. Actually, with the, yeah, 45. So Contax G2 and a 45mm lens. The film is Rollei Retro 80S, which is fantastic film. What I like about this, this is one of my kind of more abstract approaches. It's a cityscape, though it's close up. And I was just struck by the shadow patterns repeating or the shadow shapes repeating the shapes of the table and the chair. I knew it would make a great black and white photo. But even more than that, I really love the tones in this, and Retro 80S is really good for these types of long grays that you see in this particular photo. And what did I develop this with? I'm sure I developed this one. It's Rodinal, no big surprise there. Looks like I didn't put in here how exactly I developed it. I suspect it was stand developed, but I'm not sure. I keep track of, let me go back to this metadata here. You can see that you see that R00086, that's the roll number, and that's just a number that I make up, and I just go 86, 87, whatever, as I do rolls of film. And then when I put my film in sleeves, I mark the sleeve with that number, and I also write down notes about what the development was that I used. And normally I tag that, but I didn't do it in this case. So that's it for this shot. All right, here's another Hasselblad shot. I included this because I'm working on this very long-running 100 Strangers project. And this is one of my favorite shots from that series. This is on the, as I said, a Hasselblad. I think it's with the 80mm lens, and it is, yes. And this is on Fuji Acros black and white film. What I like about this is I think it's a good example. Well, first off, let me back up. I like the subject. I don't know the guy. He was a stranger, but I just love the pose that he gave me. I didn't direct him at all. It's just he looks very confident and also very calm at the same time. It's kind of an interesting expression that he has on his face. And I also think this is a good example of just how medium format can capture. I don't know how to put it into words exactly. It just captures a sense of realism that's beyond what I've seen from even really nice digital cameras, but certainly 35mm film cameras. You just don't get this sort of quality. There's just something about the smoothness of the tones and the amount of detail that's captured in medium format, and sort of the subtle gradations from in focus to out of focus, that sort of thing. I've got a number of portraits like this that I just like to look at just because of the way they look, not even so much because of the subject, even though I do like the subject in this particular shot. Another thing about the Hasselblad is when you're using a waist level finder, I don't use it at my waist, but I do look down into it when I'm composing the shot. So it always gives you a little bit of an upward angle on your subject and isolates them against the sky a lot. So that's what happened here. And if you use incident metering, you don't usually run into exposure issues when you shoot your subject against the sky. I'll sometime do a video on incident metering and why I use it. So enough on that. Next image. This is, I believe, the last one. I picked a dozen. And this is the most recent one. This is also a Hasselblad shot. And I took this, this was just last month actually. This is on, I think this is on Rollei Retro 80. If I can bring this thing up here. Actually, it's Rollei Retro 400, Retro 400S, and this is also developed in Rodinal and scanned by me. What I like about this image, it's kind of strangely disturbing, I guess. The top half is just kind of this bucolic scene, the kid kind of swinging off this little fence, and if you imagine that waterfall not being there, it just, yeah, it looks pretty, just kind of run of the mill as a kid having fun. But as you look down in the picture, you just see this dam and this big waterfall, and there's a lot of energy there, and it kind of adds this weird sense of unbalance or danger to it, at least for me. Uh, and there's kind of this zigzag thing going, the angle of the dam, and then the angle of the concrete wall the kid is standing on. The kid himself is leaning out at an angle, and it just all kind of came together nicely, in my opinion. And then it has that weird sense of, it's sort of unsettling. Like, you look at it and go, wow, what if he fell in? Would he get, pushed over the edge by the force of the water? It's just kind of a little scary in an odd way. But at the same time, it's got those beautiful Rollei tones, which I really like. And so that's it for the images. I hope that you guys like these as much as I do, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on these images and whether this sort of video is worthwhile doing. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.